Hi there. So, do you want to know the little trick that I have to keep most ferns thriving, even in the driest of environments? Stick around, I'll show you how. So in front of me, you might be able to see two ferns. One, arguably, is possibly one of the hardest ferns for most people to keep happy indoors. They will tend to crisp up like that, which is the maidenhair fern. I'll also put the Latin names down below. And the other one is the Boston fern. Granted, the Boston fern can be a bit hardier than the maidenhair fern, but I know with a lot of people with maidenhair ferns, you look at them wrong, the humidity drops ever so slightly, and they crisp up almost instantly. Now, the one thing that works like a charm for most ferns, it also works really well with other water-hungry plants. So some of my largest alocasias, I've been able to keep going and thriving like this, even the ones that need constant watering. And the same thing goes for a lot of my calatheas, my prayer plants, Tenanthes, Stramanthe, all of the plants essentially. So that big trick, secret, it's not really a secret. Some people have been using this for a while, but I don't know if everybody's aware of this, but essentially it's this wonderful little thing here. So it might look a bit weird to begin with, especially if you've never seen one before, but this is a hydro spike. So I don't know whether or not you might be able to see. Let me actually dismantle this so you can see this a bit better. There is a top part. There is also this part, which is basically a terracotta cone, and it's just got a bit of space in there for some water. And then there is a tube, and I've put a little fishing weight, and you'll see why in a minute, and where the water will come in from. So essentially, when this is all assembled, you put it all together, but what you would normally do is you would submerge this whole thing in water, and you can get these from Amazon. I think there's either packs of 3, 6 or 12. They're not particularly expensive. These are also really good if you're going away for a prolonged period of time, so say a week and a half, 2 weeks, and you need somebody to water your plants. These are a really good way of doing it. I know there's other versions where there's a bottle on the top, and then there is the terracotta and it slowly leaches water out. I never found that those work particularly well, because essentially what happens is that water will pretty much, like 2 litre bottle of water, will pretty much spill out into the plant, granted over a slower period of time, so it might take 2 or 3 days, but it still pretty much goes through a 2 litre bottle of water through the plant quite quickly. This is a much slower and steadier way of getting the water to the plant, which basically meant that I had a maidenhair fern. I don't have that one anymore, but I had a maidenhair fern that started off at this size, and by the end of it, by the first 3 or 4 months, it was absolutely huge. It wasn't in any high humidity environment, probably about 50 or 60%, which is roughly how some houses tend to be. But because I was using the hydro spike, it actually thrived, and I did not have to worry about it, did not have to really do too much about it. So essentially what you would do is you take this, you submerge it in water for about 20-30 minutes just to make sure that the terracotta is fully saturated. And then what you would do is you would take the pipe, you'd put it underwater, make sure the top is underwater with the spike, and then you take the other part, the pipe, and just suck in some air. So essentially you can just siphon in some air into the pipe itself, and whilst it's still underwater, you take the top and you detach it to the pipe, to the terracotta cone. Make sure you've closed the pipe on the other side, and then what you would do is you would put this spike into the soil, so make sure that it's all the way down to the bottom of the soil line, like that. Usually this would be for a bigger plant. And then the other side, you would put into a jar that already has some water, drop it down to the bottom. You can see now why the fishing weight is there, because it will keep it down. And the way that this works is never have the jar above the water, above the plant. The jar with the water always needs to be below the plant, essentially, so that the water will be sucked in. Essentially, as you can imagine, this terracotta will start drying out and it will suck in more of this water, and because you've essentially created a closed system with water, it essentially will siphon the water in as and when it needs it and as much as it needs. That's the important thing. That's why we'll keep most ferns happy out of this jar. And then all you need to remember to do is top up this jar. And it really is as simple as that. And that will work on nearly every single houseplant. Granted, you probably wouldn't want to do this onto succulents or cacti that like to stay dry for a period of time between waterings. But for pretty much most other plants, it works well with aroids, but especially the water-hungry plants like the ferns, like the calathea, the tenanthe, the prayer plants, who like to have some moisture in their soil and be moist evenly. This works like a charm. Same thing goes for, as I mentioned, the larger alocasias. And the thing is, with this, with a small pot like this, you can probably just have the one hydrospike. But if you have much bigger plants, you can have bigger jars, but maybe have 2 or 3 hydrospikes around the soil. And essentially then you can almost forget about watering. You just need to remember to top up the jars whenever you see that they're running a bit low. And that's it. I'd be curious to see if anybody else has used hydrospikes before, these specific ones with the tube, not the upside down bottle ones. How did you find it? How did you get on? Did they work for you? For me, they've always been exceptionally good. So yeah, if you have any of your own experiences, drop them in the comments down below. If you want to ask any questions about this, because I know there's a lot of people that were interested to use hydrospikes, but there's not an awful lot of information online that is clear on how to use it, especially how to get the water into the pipe itself so it actually functions. Yeah, let me know down below and let's have that conversation. In the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of your day and hopefully I shall see you here soon. Thanks. Bye.